This man is the commander of a Navy SEAL team, and his name is James Reese. That day, James received orders from his superiors. He was to lead 13 SEALs into Syria to capture a chemist, Dr. Kahani, in order to stop a potential chemical weapon leak. James had been through countless battles, so this mission seemed almost routine, but no one could have imagined that what looked like a simple op would become the start of his worst nightmare. After carefully planning the operation, James led his team into action that night, but as soon as they moved in on the target, they were ambushed. The enemy seemed to know their plan in advance and had set up multiple traps along their route. Surrounded and outgunned, James's team suffered devastating casualties. Backup finally arrived and pulled James and the few remaining survivors back to safety. It wasn't until he was aboard the evacuation helicopter that James realized nearly his entire team was dead. After recovering the bodies of his men, James was taken in for debriefing. His commanding officer asked him to explain what happened. James told the story as he remembered it until they played back the mission audio. James froze. The voice on the recording wasn't his. Someone had tampered with the evidence. James was forced to undergo medical tests. His superiors suspected he might have suffered a head injury in combat, causing memory lapses, but all scans came back normal. The doctor simply told him to go home, rest, avoid alcohol, and come back if any memories resurfaced. That evening, James and Boozer, the only surviving teammate, met at a bar to drink in honor of their fallen brothers. While they were drinking, a female reporter approached James. Without hesitation, she tried to press him for details about the mission. James stayed silent, poured her the rest of his drink, and walked away. Soon after, he returned home from the front lines. At the airport, his close friend Ben Edwards was there to pick him up. On the drive, James told Ben about the strange inconsistencies in the mission. Ben offered a few words of comfort, and soon James was back home safe. He thought he could finally relax and spend some quiet time with his family, but instead, he would end up bringing them a nightmare. The next morning, James received a phone call that changed his life forever. After hanging up, he rushed to Boozer's house. There, federal agents told him Boozer had taken his own life. That's impossible. He was fine yesterday. How could he have shot himself? Yesterday, yes, we were together. He was perfectly fine. The agent replied, according to the coroner, he died the night before last. There's no way you saw him last night. James was stunned. Later, he met up with Ben and invited him out on a boat, hoping to clear his mind. Out at sea, James shared his growing doubts and pulled out Boozer's personal item, a 9mm pistol. But James knew Boozer had always preferred a .45 Colt 1911. If Boozer had truly wanted to end his life, he would never have chosen a 9mm. It didn't add up. James kept these suspicions to himself and attended his teammate's funeral. Afterward, on his way home, he noticed a car tailing him. Once home, he told his wife to take their daughter inside while he quietly circled around, ready to confront the threat. To his surprise, the person in the car was the same reporter from the bar. James invited her into the garage. Katie, the reporter, thought he was agreeing to an interview. Instead, James asked if she remembered the man who had been sitting next to him that night. Her answer shook him to the core. She told him there had been no one else with him at that bar. She handed James the autopsy report on Boozer, which confirmed that Boozer had died before the night James thought they were drinking together. Before she could say more, James ordered her to leave. She left her business card and walked out. James stared at the report, his mind spinning. One moment he clearly remembered drinking with Boozer. The next, the seat beside him was empty. He locked Boozer's pistol in a safe, went upstairs, and told his wife he needed to get checked at the hospital. Maybe something really was wrong with his head. But he didn't know that would be the last conversation he'd ever have with her. James went to the hospital. As he lay in the MRI machine, images of the ambush and his fallen brothers flooded back. Time blurred until the scan ended. As he stepped out, a masked gunman pointed a weapon at him. James slowly raised his hands and sat up. Another gunman appeared, pressing a pistol to his head. James stayed calm. In a sudden move, he grabbed one gun, kicked the second assailant in the groin, and fired, dropping one attacker. But the other wasn't finished. He kicked James's weapon away. Furious, James gouged the man's eye, then delivered a crushing blow to his groin, dropping him to the floor. James pummeled him with punches, but the man fought back, slashing James across the chest with a knife. James wrapped a hospital gown around his arm to block further strikes. As they struggled, the first gunman, who had only been wounded, returned to help. Together they tried to drive the knife into James's throat, but James, stubborn and relentless, refused to yield. He twisted one attacker's arm, forcing him to stab himself, then slammed him down and bit into his wrist. The man screamed and dropped his weapon. James seized the pistol and fired 5 rapid shots, killing him. The other man, bleeding from his own wound, turned to flee. James fired another round and gave chase, but the attacker escaped into the distance. James instinctively checked the pistol, and froze. It was the very same gun he had locked in his safe the night before. At that moment, James suddenly sensed something was wrong. While making a frantic phone call, he sped home as fast as he could. He arrived quickly and entered cautiously. The silence in the house was unnerving. Then, in the kitchen, James found his wife and daughter, both shot dead. His heart shattered instantly, a grief beyond words. All he could do was scream in agony. Who could be so cruel, to kill women and children? What was it all for? No one could be more wretched than James. In just 2 days, he had attended the funerals of 15 people, including his own wife and daughter. Burying his sorrow deep inside, James laid his family to rest. He swore that no matter who was behind this, they would pay in blood. After the funeral, he sat for hours at their graves, unable to leave. That night, he wandered the house in a daze, sitting alone in the kitchen or staring at a crayon drawing of their family on his daughter's bedroom wall, lost in memories. It was unimaginable, one happy family destroyed overnight. At dawn, NCIS agents knocked on James's door. When he saw the lead agent, James suddenly remembered, this was the same man who handled Boozer's case. The agent got straight to the point. He wanted to inspect James's gun safe. James let him in and opened it. After examining it, the agent asked, who knows the combination to this safe? Only my fingerprint can open it, so no one else could have accessed the weapons. Unless they used some high-tech method to steal them. The agent began to press further, but James snapped. He pointed at the agent and yelled, accusing NCIS of being useless, wasting time harassing a victim instead of hunting the killers. He insisted again that Boozer's death was no accident. The agent didn't argue. He calmly reassured James and left. Later, Katie and the same agent went to the hospital to check the scene. The agent told Katie that he had been the first to arrive after the incident. But aside from a few shell casings fired by James, there were no traces of the attackers, no bodies, no blood. There were no security cameras in the area, either, no way to know what really happened. The agent theorized, maybe James really fought off attackers, but the scene had been cleaned before police arrived, or maybe nothing happened at all, and it was all in James's head. Whatever the reason, James had clearly gone to the hospital for a reason, and from his demeanor, the agent believed James was telling the truth. What they needed now was evidence. That night, James sat silently in his house, deep in thought. Suddenly, he heard a noise at the door. He raised his gun, crept toward the sound, and opened the door a crack. It was Katie. At first, James told her he had nothing to say. But then she said something that made him pause. After sitting down, Katie explained that the NCIS agent had been first on the scene, yet he reported no sign of attackers. James told her many professional groups are capable of erasing a crime scene in minutes. Katie then handed him a police file on Boozer's case. As James flipped through it, he saw that the same agent had also been the first to arrive at Boozer's scene. James immediately sensed something was off. After Katie left, he began digging into the agent's background online. At first, it was just to pass the time, but then he made a shocking discovery. Zooming in on a photo of the agent, James covered parts of the image with his fingers, and realized the man's eyes were identical to those of the masked attacker at the hospital. He started connecting the dots. In both Boozer's death and his family's murder, James's first call had been to the police. By protocol, the first responder should have been local police, not an NCIS agent. The agent was hiding something. James decided to tail him. He gathered his best gear and began photographing the agent's daily routines, studying his habits. Then he handed the data over to Ben, asking him, as a CIA operative, to dig deeper. Ben didn't hesitate. James didn't rest. While the agent was at work, he slipped into his apartment. After making sure it was safe, he plugged a hard drive into the agent's computer and copied all the data. When finished, he placed everything back exactly as it was and slipped out unnoticed. That night, James waited anxiously. Ben arrived at his door. The moment he stepped in, Ben shared his discovery. 2 days before James's family was killed, the agent had pulled James's personal records from a database. The agent was very likely the culprit. Ben then handed James a package. Inside was one of John Wick's favorite pistols, Ben's way of helping James get revenge for his family and fallen brothers. Late that night, James became a shadow in the dark. He scaled walls and rooftops, slipping into the agent's apartment without a sound. He approached the bed, first pocketing the gun under the agent's pillow, then shoving a thick suppressor into the agent's mouth. He ordered the agent to show his hands. After checking and finding no wounds, James knew he wasn't the masked man, but he certainly knew something. Under interrogation, the agent gave up a name, Saul Agnon. The agent said only that money had been wired to his account and he was following orders. James froze for a split second. The agent seized the moment to fight back, but James immediately put a bullet in him. The agent died on the spot. James staged the scene to look like an accident and vanished into the night. Next on the list was Saul. With the name in hand, James searched online and found another lead, Capstone Industries. He vowed to strike back. Everyone involved would be marked for death. First, he gathered all his weapons, passports, cash, handguns, an M4, even a sniper rifle. He packed everything into his vehicle, turning it into a mobile armory. Then, he set up a meeting with Katie. The two met at a crowded restaurant. As soon as they sat down, James urgently asked the reporter if she had ever heard of Saul or Industries. Katie watched James speak so frantically he was practically spitting, but she stayed in her seat. Then she pulled James's medical report from her bag. James stared at the results in shock. The scan showed a tumor in his brain. His head spun. Katie told him he was sick, that everything he'd been experiencing was just hallucinations, and that maybe he was the one who had caused all this. But at that moment, James noticed a suspicious man nearby. He abruptly cut Katie off and told her to come with him. Katie was now convinced James was ill, but for the sake of the investigation, she followed him outside. As they ran, James told her they might be under surveillance. Katie was skeptical, but as soon as they got in the car, James saw in the rear-view mirror that the suspicious man had also started his engine. James slammed the accelerator. The cars collided with a violent crash. He told Katie to stay still, then opened the door to step out. Just as he set foot on the ground, a bullet whizzed past from behind. James didn't make mistakes. He dropped the man with a single shot. After confirming the man was dead, James searched his car and found a stack of documents. Back in his own car, he handed the file to Katie. When she saw a dossier on James himself, she realized everyone had been wrong about him. James looked at her and asked, "Do you still think I'm losing my mind?" They quickly withdrew to a nearby parking lot. After switching vehicles, James handed Katie a pistol for protection. Before they parted, Katie asked for more details about Capstone Industries and promised she would help investigate. Then they went their separate ways. In a remote safe house, James met with Ben. He handed over the documents on Saul and waited for good news. Ben appeared at a golf course where Saul was playing. After weeks of surveillance, he finally tracked him down. Late at night, Saul returned from a party and began his nightly routine. While brushing his teeth, he heard music playing in his bedroom. Cautiously, he stepped into the room. Suddenly, a large figure loomed behind him. James slipped a plastic bag over Saul's head and bound him with rope. Saul quickly passed out from lack of air. When he came to, he found himself naked and tied to a chair, with James standing over him. Facing this wealthy man, James didn't even need to use his fists. Just a few chilling words were enough to make Saul wet himself in terror. Finally, Saul gave up a name, Stephen Horn. He admitted he was only a pawn, following orders. It was all tied to a project called Road 4895, though he didn't know the details. James then asked about the